Welcome back to AI Biz. I'm your host Charu, and this is the space where AI stops being a buzzword and actually starts doing work for you in the real world. Today, we're talking about something super practical: how to leverage AI for daily tasks. Not someday, not when your company finishes its AI strategy. We are talking about calendars, emails, documentation, content, workflows. The everyday stuff that quietly eats your time and energy. To unpack this, we have a serious pro in the house. Our guest today is Rob Broadhead, a veteran software architect, technology strategist, and entrepreneur with over 30 years in tech and business. He is the founder of RB Consulting and the voice behind the Developreneur podcast. He has helped the teams from startups to enterprises build smarter systems, avoid ugly IT pitfalls, and ship solutions that actually work in the wild. He's also big on mentoring and helping people build meaningful careers, not just shiny resumes. So today we're tapping into Rob's brain to figure out how AI can be your daily operations co-pilot, not your sci-fi fantasy. Rob, I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to this.
Yes, me too. So, Rob, when you look at your typical workday for a knowledge worker or founder, where do you see the biggest low hanging fruit for using AI? What are the first few tasks you say, please stop doing this manually?
I think probably the biggest one for most people actually is in the world of things like email and things like of that. Or it's the and it really actually I guess goes a little beyond that into communication. So a lot of times as a founder, you have your we'll call your flavors of emails and communications. You've got your customer interactions. Maybe you're doing proposals or you're doing invoicing or things of that nature. You're probably handling customer questions, and then you're probably doing some level of content that's marketing and branding kind of stuff that you're actually pushing out your outreach campaigns. You've got inbound stuff and outbound, and that tends to be, I think, for a lot of people, that's like an easy one where there is plenty of time that is spent on it, and AI can help you cut that down. And so even a 10 or 20 or 30% improvement adds up very quickly when you're talking about maybe an hour or two a day that you're going to be actually addressing that and improving that.
Yes, yes, agree. And I was actually wondering, can you walk us through a real example, maybe from your own day, where AI quietly saves you 30 to 60 minutes? What was the task and what tool or approach do you use and what changed?
Oh, the I'll give you one that was, I guess it's not a daily as much of a weekly. I was spending a few hours a week, probably a couple, probably close to 2 hours a week on status kinds of things that would go out to customers to say like, hey, here's what we're doing, here's what we've been doing. And mostly it was a manual task, but it was also a very mindless task for the most part because it was gathering data from a couple different places, putting that together, and incrementally over time. Initially, I just had a couple of pieces to pull that data together and throw it into a document. And then as I worked with that a little bit with AI, I found ways to do that better so that it went from being just a data store to an actual email. I had a series of emails that I basically said, had a chat with AI and said, hey, here's what my past status reports look like. This is the data that we're going to be bringing in. How would I build? And basically, I just tacked on something very quickly to an application because I'm a developer. I'll do that pretty quick. But it can build things like that that says, well, just give me the information and I'll spit something back out for you. I built something that automated it one step further, but within a chat, you can do that. You can have your prompt that says, here's all of and you can even tell your AI tool to generate the prompts for you. You can say, well, we've had this discussion. Give me some prompts that would allow us to encapsulate this. You can take that, and now you've got like a voice, a tone for your business. You've got a goal for whatever that is, and in this case, it's like take this data, turn it into something that feels like it comes from us, that is a status, and then you take a look at it as a human being. So there's still a little bit of time to review it, but the the gathering and putting the general content together suddenly became very quick. And where it was like a multi-step process, I had essentially eliminated almost every step. So really it was just the first step and the last review step to send stuff out. And things like that, I think you see them a lot. So I think it's, and some people, they may say, oh yeah, I do stuff like that on a daily basis, and they can make those improvements.
Yes, yes. I feel like that's such a solid time management and not some science fiction story. There you go. But I think a lot of people still imagine AI as the giant transformation project instead of a series of tiny wins that free up brain space for the real strategic work. So why don't we talk about that? One big gap that I see is that people see an impressive AI demo, they say, wow, and they go back to doing life exactly the same. In your consulting work, how do you help teams move from AI is cool to AI is now baked into our daily workflows?
It's, I think it's like a lot of stuff that we do is it's very much an incremental approach, and you do it in bite-sized pieces. It's the whole, you don't want to eat the elephant in one bite kind of thing. Is you want to like actually like take little bites, and those are the things that get us, I think, build momentum too. Is that we sit down and talk about like what are the things that you spend the most time on? What are the tasks that eat up your day or that are your pain points that you really don't enjoy doing, and that they suck out your ability to have that time to work on your business instead of in your business. And that's where we start is we'll sit down and say like, and sometimes it's easy as look at your daily or weekly calendar. What is it that consumes most of your time? And then within that, we look for ways to do some automation. And it's not looking, yeah, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by like the big, huge, wins, and it blocks them from just saying, well, hey, you can take this little thing that you do and get a win there. And maybe it's not huge. Maybe it's not saving you, your company millions of dollars or anything like that. But if you're saving yourself even 5 or 10 minutes a day, that's 5 or 10 minutes you get back to do something else. And then I see that snowball effect where like as you can do that, now you've got time to think about some other projects or other problems, tackle those. And the next thing you know, you've made sweeping improvements, and it really didn't take it was not as daunting as it seemed. It's the trip of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Well, you take that first step, and sometimes it doesn't really have to be that big or that impressive to get you moving forward.
Yes, true. Agreed. Tiny, consistent steps, I feel like. And Rob, if a small business owner or solo founder is listening right now, what is one simple framework that they can use to decide this task deserves AI and this one does not? So they do not end up either ignoring AI or trying to force it into everything.
Actually, if you really are struggling as an owner, you just really don't know where to go, is like list out your top 3 or 5 or 10 process steps and problems, things that you're like, maybe this will work. Maybe I can improve this. Think of the whole like, if you could snap your finger and just magically fix something, what would that thing be, or what would those things be? There's usually more than one thing. One of the easiest ways to do it, if you don't know, is take those, list them out, and put it into just pick your favorite AI engine, put it, Perplexity or Chat or whatever it is, and just type in and say, hey, I have these concerns. What are some ways AI could help me with that? And you might get some very out there solutions, but a lot of times you will see stuff. There'll be things that are particularly common business problems that you will get back and answer it, and it will be using a multiple options. So it'll say like, well, AI can help you with this problem by doing A or B or C, and you can actually go down that path, and it will say like, well, which one would you like? So say, well, tell me more about option B, and then you can get some more information there. And for me, a lot of times that is very helpful to get you to think outside the box a little bit. When you're blocked, it's a great way to just throw it as like a consultant. So treat it as like a little mini consultant. Just that, like, okay, I'm stuck. Here's what I'm thinking. And even if it doesn't give you a solution, a lot of times it'll at least give you some thoughts. And it's like, okay, now I can start moving forward, and I can maybe like work this problem because now I have a different perspective, or now there's something I didn't consider that I can put into the mix to allow me to get unstuck.
Yes, yes. I feel like that's such a solid filtration process because using AI to understand what tasks can be done by AI. And I feel like this structure is quite important because without this, people either get stuck in analysis paralysis or they try to automate chaos. And they say AI did not work when the real problem is the process there. And Bob, now that we talked about process filtration, we should probably also talk about the risk, right? Because AI can be in, yeah.
Oh, I should say, like you nail it with this, like if you're automating a process or if you're speeding up a process that is not well defined, that's one of the biggest risks. And but it's also sort of like a reward there is because you will see that your process is broken or flawed. And that is very often a case that you'll run into when you're first starting out if you haven't really thought through your processes and your procedures.
Yes, yes, that's what I was trying to get into. So Rob, how do you coach people to use AI without outsourcing their critical thinking or their professional judgment?
Um, You really don't have to you can stay very general, with your problems and things like that. You don't have to get into the specifics, so you can protect your secret sauce or your, internal secrets and stuff like that by asking more general problems, using general terms as you define the problem. So instead of things like, mentioning a customer name or maybe a specific issue with, or like something that's very specific to them, you could say, hey, how would I handle a situation where we're struggling to deliver results to a customer and they're not happy at it, or something like that. Sometimes you can extract it out and it will allow you then to like still make some progress on it and you can drill down where you need to but then it's just you continue to stay sort of general and in specific non-specific in how you do it so that you're not giving up something that you wouldn't want like your competition to know or something like that.
Yes, yes. And I was also wondering, can you give an example where AI got something almost right, but when a human sanity check made quite a difference? What did the review process look like in a practical way?
I'll take a rather big one that I was on a project that they used AI to help build out the requirements. And this is actually something I see very often these days. I see a lot of requirements and requests for proposals about that. It's very obvious that AI was a portion of that. And the issue in this case was they started from we want to build X and they didn't actually want to build X. They used the wrong terminology. And I see this a lot where people are like, well, we need a CRM or an ERP or or EMR or these things where they're like, I hear this, and so that's what we want. But then it's not actually what they want. It's not really what they need. Yes, that tool, like CRM, people like, oh, we need a CRM. Well, yeah, it may help, but it may not actually be the problem you're trying to solve. And so, what you end up doing is instead of defining the problem properly, you've already sort of baked the solution. You're sort of like, well, I think this is the solution. So, like in that case, like I think a CRM is the solution. Well, you actually got ahead of it. You should have actually thought through that first part. The first step first, first things first. And in what ended up happening is it generated out here's all the things you need to do. And then when it got into actually reviewing it and saying and signing off and saying, okay, well, this is what we're going to build, there's a lot of stuff that was cut out of it because it was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Because AI was building towards was solving problems that weren't actually problems for the end customer. And so the sanity check, the human review on it said, "Oh, wait a minute. We asked for that, but we really didn't ask for that." So when you started actually listing out what it was going to provide, it's like, "Oh, wait, that's incorrect." And so it got shrunk down to more what was a an actual solution.
And I feel like that detail, that nuance is something we people need to hear because AI is a force multiplier, not an excuse to turn our brains off, right, Rob?
Mm. Yeah, very much so. And it's there was actually a medical thing not too long ago that's shown up that people using AI very often actually do turn their brain off. There's a lot of stuff there. They were looking at people that were using AI versus people that were working through like traditional methods of solving problems. And it allows us to sort of put some of our parts of our mind to sleep because like, okay, well, I'm just going to offload that to AI, which is, I think it's a danger is you've got to make sure that you've really thought about what you're doing before you put it out there. And so that, yes, you can turn your brain off and it frees you to think about other things, but that doesn't free you from doing the proper things that you're supposed to. You don't get to skip steps. It's you need to make sure that you cover the steps and that you're very clear on what steps AI is going to take.
Yes, yes. I feel like the balance is really important to understand how much of AI are you using in your life. And just thinking about just thinking about that maybe makes some change in our brain and maybe we stop using as much as AI that we use in our daily lives right now. And Rob, now that we talked about AI in daily lives, practical stuff, small stuff, can we dig deeper into developing and founding stuff, right?
Yeah, it's this can be interesting because AI and no code tools have been around for a little bit and some things like for a few years, and AI is definitely a part of that and is enhancing that. And I think it is very much a challenge for businesses because there are a lot of barriers to entry that are disappearing, depending on what your industry is. Marketing, for example, there's a lot of marketing people that are like, oh well, companies come in and say, well, we don't really need a marketing department anymore because we can just have AI generate our content and generate our images and do all of the stuff for us. And there is some level of that that is available, but it's also there's still you need that human touch. There's still yes, there are deep fakes and things like that that are out there that are very difficult for people to understand or AI, but it also AI doesn't necessarily talk to us the way we talk to each other. And so there's still that human touch that is needed. And I think we have this opportunity to solve a lot of problems quickly. As far as like we can spin up new apps and we can find problems like I did. Like, hey, I had this problem. I wanted to build an app to do that for me real quick. And I was able to very quickly. And then I can throw that out there and say, hey, I found this thing. If anybody else wants to use it, great. But now the barrier to entry is almost zero because somebody else could build it themselves if they wanted to and customize it themselves. Um, so I think it is sort of like a two-sided sword of like, yes, like think about when you have problems and you're like, "Now, this is a challenge for me." There may be some things you can sit down and generate a solution very quickly, but also for anything that your organization, your company is providing as a value, you need to make sure that the value you're adding is not something that has suddenly become a commodity because AI could do that, faster, quicker, and maybe even more consistently.
Yes, yes. And if I can, I would like to expand this conversation a bit more. Rob, you have worked deeply with developers and the business leaders. How should technical people and non technical people think differently about AI for daily tasks? Or should they even think about it differently?
I think they have to. I think as a developers, it is as you mentioned, it's a force multiplier. Developers can, if they have solid foundations, they can generate stuff that they can use AI and build things out that are, basically as quality, have the same level of quality, sometimes even a little bit better because they can get tests around it, things like that. So there are ways to make them much more productive to the level of, 70 or 80% more productive, which is huge, but it's also there's certain areas where it's just not going to help because it's just AI is it's a problem it hasn't been solved. So maybe AI isn't going to help as much. For non-technical people, I think it is. I think it's the same thing, is that there are gonna be areas in your job that you can be much, much more productive. And it is sort of it is a improver, or if you're not getting better, then you're getting worse kind of thing. And I think this is where we need to it's here, it's gonna be here to stay. It's gonna be part of, everybody's job as we move further and further into it. There's gonna be obviously big projects that will be AI projects that companies will execute across their organization. But I think even right now, it is worthwhile to get comfortable with it and start using it on a daily basis, even if you're not terribly successful with it, but just and start getting used to it. I often refer back to the early days of Google and search engines when people initially were like, they really didn't know what search engines were or how to use them. and they have now become very much a factor in everybody's life. We have a generation that doesn't even know what life is without search engines. And AI is, I think, going to very quickly be the same way. If you're not comfortable with it, everybody else is, and you're really gonna struggle to be relevant, I think, in your career and as a business.
Yes, yes, agreed. And Bob, if I may, for the non-technical listeners who's not quite comfortable with AI and is thinking, I'm not technical enough for this, what is one small confidence building AI habit that they can start today? Something that does not require coding skills or fancy integration.
I would say strike up a chat with just like pick anything that comes to mind, almost like we use search engines now for all kinds of stuff. If you're sitting there with your friends and you're like, "Hey, what was the movie of the year in 1950?" or something like that, and people will go, use a search engine for that. Use a chat tool for that. That's what the youngest generation is doing, and I think that will help you because then you'll be able to start understanding, particularly if you use them in their more verbose mode, is you're not gonna get just an answer. It's not gonna say the name of the movie. It's gonna give you a lot of background around that. And a lot of times, I think as you do that, you're gonna start getting extra questions about what is presented in the answer. Ask those, feed that back into the tool and say, "Okay, well, can you tell me more about this thing?" Because that is gonna be it requires it's just a conversation at that point. It doesn't require technology at all or any technology skills, but it does build for you as a user how to have those kinds of conversations, how to change how where we use details and the kind of details we provide in questions. Because you're quickly going to find that AI only knows what you give it. So if you have very broad and general questions, you're going to get broad and general answers. If you have specific answers that you want or that you're looking for, then you're going to have to ask more specific questions.
Yes, yes. I feel like that step is quite simple and practical. Just put yourself out there in the AI world, chat with it, understand how it answers, understand what you want from AI. I feel like that's some solid reassurance there for the people who think they are not technical enough. But I feel like once someone builds that confidence, the real shift is what it does for their career, the AI. So I want to zoom out for a second and look at the future. From your vantage point, what happens to the careers of people who lean into AI now for daily task versus those who resist it and hope it goes away? How different do you think their value in the market looks in 3 to 5 years?
I think I think you're really gonna struggle in 3 to 5 years if you haven't been doing if you haven't gotten yourself comfortable with AI, because I think it's gonna become an expectation. AI has been referred to as like a very bright entry-level employee, and so it really what working with AI does is it forces us to sort of lean into our leadership and management skills that we have varying levels of it, but really it comes down to now you're managing something. You're managing this tool and telling it, here's tasks I need you to do, here's how those tasks need to be performed. And that one of the things that does is that removes tasks off of your plate. You can take tasks that you were supposed to do. Now you have a delegate basically in AI that you can say, hey, I want you to go do this task. And that's gonna be such a differentiator that I think it's gonna very quickly become almost expected. I don't know if 3 to 5 years is quite that, but I would not be shocked if by the time you get into 5 or 6 years out, because now you will have had people that will have gone through their college careers that are stepping into the workforce that probably will have spent a lot of time in AI. I don't know how the education system is doing as far as integrating AI and allowing that to be a part of it, but I think that will come very soon. And so once you have entry level people that are coming out that can raise their game, so now their value is much higher. They effectively have the equivalent of experience, even without experience, because they can tell the tool to do some of these things. I think that's going to now like allow them to compete with people that are higher levels up. And so what's going to happen is the highest levels, yeah, you'll be able to survive for a little bit without AI. If you're very deeply experienced, you've been able to do a lot of stuff, then there's things you're still going to be able to bring to the table, even that somebody that has less experience, even with AI, they just can't do that. But that's a gap that's gonna start to change. And especially as people, they'll add experience and then they have AI on top of it. So they will reach your level sooner and faster. And at some point, that means depending on where you're at in your career, you're going to fall back into like entry level competition. Maybe you've got 5 years of experience, but now you're struggling to compete with people that are coming straight out of college or something like that, or, entry level people that they're not looking for the same salary. They're not looking, there's a lot of ways that they're gonna be a better value for the company, and so or the employer. So I think it's one of those things that you really do need to start looking at it. I think we're gonna be forced to as well. I think there's gonna be as people have success, as companies have success, they're just gonna say, "This is part of what your job is." Like, everybody uses email now. I don't know if there probably are some, but there are very few companies that don't say you have to use email. And most of them, but you have to use a word processor or Excel to some extent. You've got certain tools you have to use, and I think we're gonna see that in AI as well. It's gonna be expected, and so it's either do it now and start getting used to it, or you're gonna be forced to do it through training or something later on.
Yes, yes, agreed. Similar to Microsoft or Gmail, I think AI will surely become part of basic skill set. Uh,
Mhm.
So, but if someone wants to future-proof their career starting this month, what are the top two daily habits with AI you would recommend? Things that will compound over time and signal this person knows how to partner with technology.
We actually use this a lot we've talked about this a lot in the Developreneur, podcast. We talk about, like, automating and things like that, and I think the 2 areas are I think one is make it part of your, like, a daily routine is that you have a chat with an AI tool, even if it's just doing your searches or things like that, or just telling it to, like, review an email that you're gonna send out, or things like that that are very you don't need to be technical. You don't need to do anything other than just throw it at AI and say, "Give me some, give me some feedback on this." And then the other thing is the automation side is think as I would challenge people that if you really want to AI proof your career is like maybe let's say every week, look at your calendar, look at your schedule, look at what you've done, and look at like what is it that you spend a lot of time doing, and then see if you can find a way, like, and maybe just to chat with AI and say, like, I spent a lot of time on X, on doing this task. What are some ways that I can improve it? And it may point you to tools, it may point you to process improvement or just things like that. But I think if you're on a regular basis, like for example, every week you have as a goal is to automate, improve, simplify something that you do, then one, you're going to get better over time because if you say, okay, this week I found that I've got this process I want to improve. Well, next week I'm going to improve it. And then that in the week you're finding out the next one. So now you're improving things all along the way. You're getting better at it. And you're going to find that you're going to go back to those things. So maybe the thing that you improved the first week, you come back a month later and you go, I think I can do better at that, or it's not doing exactly what I want it to do. And so you're going to start getting into the idea of being able to refine those solutions. And I think those are the things that are going to get you very quickly to be much more valuable to your employer. You're going to free up your time. You're going to be able to do the things that I recently put a post out where it's like the important things is being able to do the human stuff and like get AI to do the stuff that is automated and can be done in a very robotic and systemic fashion so that you can focus more on the things that you bring to the table that are the human and the unique experience that you have and bring your personal value.
Yes, yes, agreed. Tiny, consistent steps and slowly but surely expand your boundaries while reducing your limitations. Yes. So, Rob, that was a very insightful conversation with you. And for our listeners who would love to connect with you, can you please tell them the ways to do so?
The best way is our website, RB Consulting website is rb-sns, Sam Nancy Sam.com. We've got plenty of information there. There's contact form and things like that. I'm happy to sit down for, spend 30 minutes and sit down and talk to people. Like, how can we help you? What are some of the problems and see if we can, give you some quick solutions on and quick direction on where you can go, particularly if you're blocked, if you're struggling, if you're like, I just don't know what this is going to do for me, but I know I need to do something. we're happy to have that conversation. So you can do that. You can shoot me an email, rob@rb-sns.com. If you're more on the technical side, check out Developreneur, Building Better Developers podcast. There's a lot of, we're at almost 1,000 episodes, and we've covered a lot of different topics, including AI and ways to leverage such things. And we have a lot of conversations with AI leaders these days that I think there's always a couple of great suggestions that come out of that.
Yes, great. So the website link, the email, and the podcast link will be in our show notes. So I request all our listeners to go and check that too. Rob, thank you very much for this.
Oh, thanks a lot. This has been great. Those are great questions.
Yes, thank you. For everyone listening, here is your next move if you're serious about leveraging AI for daily tasks, not just liking posts about it on LinkedIn. In the next 24 hours, do this mini challenge. 1. Audit your day. Pick one normal workday, write down 3 tasks that felt repetitive, boring, or mentally draining. Think email drafting, meeting notes, summarizing documents, basic research, or content outlines. Second, pick one task and pair it with AI. Use your favorite AI tool to help with just one of those tasks. Ask it to draft the first version, summarize the info, generate options, or create a template. Your only job is to review and refine. Third, measure the time saved. Even if you only save 10 to 15 minutes, that is the start of your new baseline. Those minutes add up. That is how transformation actually looks in the real world. You do not need to master AI, you just need to start partnering with it in small, consistent ways that move the needle for your day. Thank you for tuning in. This has been your host, Sharu, and you've been listening to AI Best.